Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, where we break down the latest in TV, movies, and everything going on in entertainment. I'm your host, Migs.
I'm Sid.
And today we're going to be reviewing episode 3 of The Last of Us on HBO Max. So stay tuned for our deep dive into this episode.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Limit Breakdown. Today we're going to review episode 3 of The Last of Us on HBO Max. Oh my god, episode 3. I need a moment. It was a beautiful, beautiful episode. And at the end of it, I'm like, well, that just happened.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing whenever you deviate from the source material, because this is the biggest deviation that they've done in
Correct.
the show.
They did a whole episode
so
on the deviation.
So far in the game, you meet Bill, and he talks about Frank, and I think you even come across a note left behind from Frank.
I can't remember exactly. It's been a while.
But it's basically, it's never explicitly said that they had a relationship.
They were partners.
But but in the note, Frank is like, "Oh, I can't stand you anymore. I'm sick of living like this." And then somewhere in the aftermath of him leaving Bill, he gets bit, and then he decides to kill himself rather than to turn. So them going the route that they took with Bill and Frank in the episode was a huge departure from what it did in the game.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I enjoyed it.
I liked it, and although as a turn of the way that they chose to represent these characters in the show, we didn't get some of the interactions I was looking forward to. I was looking forward to some of the quippy, witty one-liners that Ellie and Bill get back and forth to, and some funny moments. But I think what we got instead was a beautiful love story and a glimpse into just what is at stake and what people are truly fighting for. In this such a dark and really depressing world. Like it was a very beautiful love story, but it was also very depressing.
Oh yeah. Well, I disagree with a certain part of that. I don't think it was depressing as much. It was depressing to the viewer.
Yes.
I think it was depressing to the viewer, but not the actual characters. Right. So in the show, once the apocalypse happens, and the townspeople leave, Bill basically starts walling off his area. He stays, turns on the electricity by himself, and he's basically self-sufficient for 4 years and very well off. He turned out.
Well, he was I guess previously some type of survivalist. Yeah. So it's one of those people that, like, they're paranoid about the government coming in and taking everybody and killing everyone and becoming tired. And it's like the one guy who was right. and they show the flashback of the Fedra agents coming into his house, and it was really clever how he had the chest of drawers above the door.
Oh yeah.
So like, when he flips it down, it just looks like just like a regular piece of furniture, and they never think to look below it. And so he's watching everything through like CCTV and
so he's basically a survivalist. He doesn't trust the government. When basically shit hits the fan, he goes out and he's like, okay. He goes out, gathers his materials, turn on the electricity by himself. Walls off his little neighborhood, hunting deer or whatever he's getting, and then he's living fine. Yeah. Living perfectly fine by himself for 4 years. His traps go off. He has laid traps all over the place.
Yeah, he's got booby traps all over the place.
All over the place where, it's killing zombies or what have you. And then Frank falls into one of his traps. He goes to check. Guys are live. And he's like, okay, well, go on to Boston. He's like, well, I'm headed to Boston. He's like, all right, I'm Boston that way. He's like, can I get some food, man? He's like, and Bill makes a very interesting point. He's like, well, if I allow you to eat and then you leave, you're going to tell other people, and now other people are going to come here. Right? And I'm like, that makes a very valid sense. Either kill the guy or just let him go, because if other people come back, your sanctity will be broken.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. So against his all wishes, he's like, screw it. Come in, stay for a little bit, stay for dinner. And that just starts a chain of them kind of like getting to know each other. There's a piano moment.
The piano thing was very interesting to me because it was a very there's a lot of things that don't normally get addressed, right? And this is gonna get a little bit more I guess problematic than we typically get into in our conversations, but as two heterosexual males, and talking about like how a gay male relationship is being portrayed on screen, and it's not something that's typically given out to the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not very often. I mean, a lot of times when they portray like gay men in relationships, it's a very, very feminine, very freely, and these are like two very capable, manly men.
Yeah.
And but there was a certain softness that was given to them. There was a certain I really respect with which the vulnerability that was shown
from Bill's side.
From Bill's side, and just you get to see just the effects of, hey, this person is surviving, but that's all that they're doing. They have nothing to live for. They're existing. They're surviving. They're existing. They're not really living. And that I think is the biggest takeaway from the episode, is that there's no point in surviving if there's nothing to live for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Frank represented to Bill. Was once Frank came into the picture, Frank was what Bill was fighting to protect. There's a line later on in the episode where he said, I was never afraid until you came along.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was very beautiful. And I loved how they showed that the relationship wasn't perfect. Shortly after Bill agrees to let Frank stay, the very next flash forward is 3 years later, and they're arguing and yelling at each other in the street.
Because Frank wanted to paint the house and set up the boutique.
Yeah.
And he's like, why? Why do we need it? Like, we don't need that stuff. And they're like, I like it. Also, we're having guests. He's like, what?
That was when they Frank revealed that he'd been talking to Tess on the radio.
Yeah.
And that's another one of the things. It's like, they kind of balanced each other out, whereas, but Bill was very pragmatic, and he, Frank probably shouldn't have been talking to anybody, was really putting them in a spot, because had he been talking to the wrong person.
Yeah.
But then, Joel brings that up, because that scene with all of them having that Sunday tea.
Oh, man.
And he's got the gun on the table, and Joel's like, I get it. Like,
I was kind of surprised that Joel didn't have a gun underneath the table.
He probably
because he's like, because I have one pointed at you. But he's like, I understand, because if it was somebody else, you're kind of screwed. You got to protect your people. And it was funny is right after that scene, they're like, oh, we should come up with some sort of code system for our signals, and then you're like, connected to the first episode
about the songs,
playing the songs, 60s, 70s, 80s. So that was great. So now you know where those signals were coming from Tem.
Good.
I was gonna say so after that, they've been living together for a long time, and one day they're raided by raiders, coming through. And they're attacking. Bill's outside just shooting away, and he gets shot. They go inside, and the scene goes black. I swear I thought Bill died.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought Bill died. The whole time watching the show, now playing the game, I knew how the story unraveled. I thought in the show they're going to kill off Frank.
Yeah.
So, right, and I was like, Frank's gonna die.
Yeah.
Clearly Frank's gonna die.
Yeah.
But then when Bill was laying on the table with a gun wound, I was like, Bill died. I was like, I wasn't expecting that twist.
Yeah.
Turns out he did not die. And he kept on living. So, I guess it shows them that even after that, Bill's booby traps are ironclad. He had flamethrowers, he had his booby traps, he was his gun just shooting, and nobody can penetrate that fortress.
Yeah.
Bill did a great job. I want Bill on my team. If anything hits the fan. What were you gonna say?
No. It was like I said. The dynamic in the relationship, because I thought the same thing that you did. I was like, okay, so they're showing you the background of their relationship, and Frank's gonna die. I figured that from the beginning, but I figured he would die, and then Frank would be left alone to become bitter, and we'd get the old angry version of Bill that we got in the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I figured. And then even towards the latter end, that last little scene with them where Frank's like, hey, this is my last day, and I want you to put the pills into the wine bottle and make your meal. We'll get married and all that, and then I want to die in your arms.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, so this is how he's gonna die, and this is how Bill is gonna be left without Frank, and it didn't make sense to me at that point, because I'm like, after all of this, like if it was me, like what do you have left to live for?
Yeah.
And so when he's making the thing, and then it was very telling, because you see Bill crush up the pills into the wine, right?
In front of him,
and then he takes the wine and he just chugs it.
Yep.
Right? And then Bill takes his glass of wine and he just chugs his. And so that's when Frank is like, there's already pills in that wine.
Yeah.
He's like, enough to kill a horse.
Yep.
And so
it was so sweet.
And but going more into the purpose, I think that for me it was very important for them to show us the difference, that despite all of the tragedy going on around them, that they were still able to make something out of all of the chaos.
Yeah.
And in it, even though it wasn't perfect, they still were able to have their version of a happy ending.
Yeah, great.
And I thought it was very, very telling too, because Bill, was like, hey, this isn't, your typical suicide at the end of the story. Like, I'm old. I've lived my life. I'm satisfied with how I've lived.
Yeah.
Like, this
I think he had a stroke at some point, because in the later scenes when they're older, you can see, Bill is wheeling him around.
Yeah.
And when he's painting, he's like struggling to paint, so you can see that clearly some sort of illness has befallen upon him.
So I just thought it was a very graceful and fitting end to two characters, and I love how this show has now for the second time really made us care about characters that we've only had we've only had Bill and Frank for one episode. We had Tess for 1.5 episodes. Like, so, and they've made us become invested in these characters, and I think the storytelling so far has been absolutely top notch.
Yeah.
And like I said, as a straight man, for me to be emotionally touched by this story, like that's a testament to good storytelling.
Yeah.
Like,
it
was absolutely, there were a couple that at the final scene where he's carrying him to bed, like I was on the verge of tears. Like it was absolutely beautiful.
It was fantastic. And then if you think about it from the character's perspective, they lived 20 years, 16 years. Bill lived 20, Frank did 16 because he can't a very nice life. Yeah. They were self-sustained. They had everything. They had vegetables that they started trading from Tess and Joel. They had wine. They had their guns, obviously. They had really nice, comfy lives. They never had to really struggle, and I think that's really good.
The one little pet peeve that I have is how much wine was in that that wine store that he raided, because I don't know about you, but I think I could go through an entire store of wine in 20 years.
I mean, maybe they were smuggling from Joel and them.
Yeah, probably. But
so, maybe in their older age, they didn't have as much wine.
But moving forward into the episode though, and then showing a little bit about the aftermath of Tessa's death and how Ellie and Joel were responding to it, and again, Ellie is showing how strong of a character she is. I really enjoyed the interaction where, you know, she starts to talk to Joel and she's like, hey, about Tess, and he's like, I don't want to hear you're sorry, and she's like, I wasn't going to say I'm sorry. I was going to say you guys knew what you got into and nobody forced you to, so don't blame me for your own decisions.
Yep.
And I thought it was pretty important that she stood up for herself, and I think that he respected that she stood up for herself. But it shows that she's not just some helpless little girl.
Yeah, and she doesn't want to be a burden on him. Be like, oh, you're doing this out of favor. No, you literally chose yes or no. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. The other half of the episode, so at the end of the episode, when they go to Bill and Frank's house, they're finding, they can't find them, and then they find the note, and it says, to whomever finds it, probably Joel, and it has the keys, and then she reads the note, yada, 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 and then she's like, please take care of Tess, and she doesn't say it. And I think at that point she understands. She's like, she understands what Joel is going through, but she doesn't want to say it. Yeah. So from the previous of her being like, I'm an independent person, Tess died, don't blame me, to she's like, well, I understand. You have emotions. Yeah. But Joel cuts her off, and he's like,
we're not talking about it. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to put this in a box. I'm going to put the box away.
Yeah. And he's like, and then I think at that point is when he kind of realized that he's like, this is something I have to do. At least basically have to take care of her. So I might as well pull all the guns out and do it as well as possible.
Another part of that note that I think is going to be important for the show going forward is with it was kind of a cruel reminder of his failure to protect Tess, and at the same time it was also a reminder that Tess's dying wish was for him to get Ellie to the Fireflies. So I think if anything, it's going to serve as kind of like an anchoring point for him to finish the mission, to finish the job. If not for Ellie, but for Tess and for Bill and for Frank. And you realize that he does have a purpose, and at least at this moment his purpose is going to be to get Ellie to the Fireflies to hopefully try to find a cure for humanity, which is, hey, no more of a more noble purpose than I could think of.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, this was the biggest departure from the game, but I think it really it didn't necessarily move the story forward a whole lot, but I think the emotional impact was tremendous, and it showed a little bit of beauty and a little bit of light in the darkness, if you will, to quote the Fireflies. But it was absolutely, I think, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I think it was one of the best episodes of television I've seen in a really long time.
Fantastic episode. Started off intense, and then showed the companionship of Bill and Frank, their love. You get to know these characters, and at the end they have a peaceful death. And they lived a peaceful life, and then from a character perspective, they had a happy life. From a viewer perspective, obviously you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Kind of sad.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what you were saying. Yeah. Like when I said that it was very depressing because obviously they.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that it was done very well is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then moving to a little bit of a lighter note, I was amused and a little bit. I found it very, very funny how Ellie didn't know what a seatbelt was. It was her first time in a car,
and she's like,
And she's just like, oh my god, this is like a spaceship. And he's like, no, it's more like a shitty S10.
Yeah, and he's like, all right, seatbelt, and she's like,
huh?
Oh, what?
But
like,
I mean
that for you.
Yeah, but it's crazy. But that's like little things that you don't think of. Like she, unless she's getting transported somewhere, she would really have no reason to get into a car ever or learn how to drive.
So I found that funny. And then I thought about it when we were watching. They're going from where they're still in Boston, right? They're outside of Boston.
Yeah, outside of Boston
on the way to Wyoming. And I was like, if they pack all this stuff and somebody sees them, they're gonna see that the car's packed. They're gonna raid them. Because Linda was like, they should pack more stuff. I was like, no. If it's underneath, it's gonna look like they don't have a lot. So raiders have less chance to go snooping in the car.
I mean, I think if they have a car, cars are gonna be a rare enough. Working cars are gonna be a rare enough thing where if any car on the road is gonna be a target, I would think.
Yeah, and the roads might be blocked too.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty
and then probably fuel is not very accessible. And I mean, contrary to popular belief, fuel has a shelf life, so it's not like you could siphon fuel off.
I think in the show they're gonna have forever fuel because remember Bill did have tanks of gas, so I think Joel might have picked up a few of those and be fine. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. It was a fantastic episode so far. This series has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Without getting into spoilers for the next episode, I'm super excited for what's been shown in the previews. There's a very iconic moment from the video game that was teased in the preview that I'm very excited to see.
I did not see the preview, so I have no idea what you're talking about. It's going to be a full-on surprise for me.
But yeah, so far it's been everything I could have hoped for. So how about you?
Yeah, same. I think it was a beautiful episode how they did Bill and Frank's characters, how they built them, made us love them, and then kill them. They Ned Starked us. HBO Ned Starked us. I swear, every time the HBO symbol comes on the dun, the first thing I think of I'm like, wrong show. But yeah, beautiful episode. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I am super excited to what the rest of the show brings.
Right on. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week.
On that, thank you guys for watching.
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the video. Check us out on all of our different podcast platforms, on here on YouTube, on TikTok, all the other things. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time with our next review.